How's it going?
Very good. How are you?
Not bad. Is it okay if I record you?
Please record away.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. Wow, it's actually a real thrill to meet you, man.
Oh, it is. Thanks very much. Nice
Yeah.
to meet you too.
Good. All right. Well, okay, so I don't have that much time with you. I gotta ask you. So I'm looking at your filmography, and you've done a couple of horror movies, but not a ton. You've only done kind of a selection of horror movies, and I just wanted to know, why do you think it is that and because I've noticed that pretty much everybody always wants to do a horror movie at some point in their career. What is it that really draws these powerhouse performers such as yourself to horror movies?
Well, I'm not even sure that I was drawn to a horror movie per se when I took this on. It was really, when I read the script, I don't remember reading it as a sort of a horror movie. I remember reading the drama of what happened to Father Peter, and how he sort of teaches or then manipulates this younger protege in Father Daniel. So I didn't necessarily, I mean, obviously I spoke to Justin, our writer director, and got a sense from him that this is what he was going for, but that wasn't what necessarily sort of drew me to doing it. Because even if I'm doing a drama, or if I'm doing a psychological thriller, or if I'm doing a comedy or whatever, I just have to believe the character I'm playing. So I tend to sort of focus more on the character than I do on the style or the genre, or, I need to understand the style. I need to understand the tone of the film and make sure that I'm in the right movie, because sometimes I've been in the wrong movie. Or I've done the wrong thing in the right movie. So, I've got to make sure that I'm towing the line. But yeah, it wasn't necessarily that I was sort of seeking out a horror movie per se.
Mhm. All right. Well, I got to say, one of the things that was great about the movie was that your performance and Vadhir, Derbez, the two of you guys together, really do ground the movie, I think, with some very passionate acting. I think it's some legitimate acting, some real stakes. But I gotta imagine one of the things that drew you to the part had to be the fact that you got to do exorcisms on screen. Like, that seems like that would be fun, right? Because especially the
Look,
first scene where you pull out the cross, you seem really into it.
well, but the role requires that, that
Yeah.
the power that a character has, no matter how that is presented, is always something very appealing for an actor to play. I mean, whether a character has power or whether a character is seeking power but doesn't actually have any, all that stuff I find fascinating.
Mhm.
And yes, of course, to feel like you can draw the devil out of somebody, that you've got the power to convince somebody to change how they actually are, is a really sort of intoxicating invitation. So hopefully it worked.
And also, I mean, I think that most exorcists on the screen are always measured against Max von Sydow in The Exorcist. But what I liked about the movie is that it must have been kind of fun to turn the big screen idea of a priest on its head. Where you're wearing like a cool Henley and like a streetwise priest, in like regular guy clothes. Oh, that was pretty cool.
Yeah, well, that's right. And I've obviously got that line to Vadhir where I say, you've got
Yeah.
to change your clothes. You look too much like a priest, So it was, it was nice the way that Justin presented the story, and the way that he, took this sort of idea, I suppose, and flipped it a little bit, as you rightly point out. So yeah, it was great fun.
Not getting too much into spoiler territory, but it also had to be kind of a challenge. The fact that in this one role, you get to, in some ways, play a lot of different kinds of parts, right? You're the protagonist, maybe somewhat of an antagonist at times. I mean, that's got to be an interesting challenge for an actor, right? Toeing that
Well,
line.
that's right. And I mean, he's also, he also presents as a victim too. He presents
Sure.
as somebody who is experienced or has experienced horror, and is trying to grapple with that's actually the main driver, to be honest, which is what I think justifies the slightly rebellious attitude, which is, I've got nothing to lose anymore. I've seen the devil in its worst form. All I'm here now to do is to try and, I've got a score to settle, as he says in the film. I want to beat this fucker, and because it's beaten me, 25 years ago, and I'm just out to try and get him back. So there's something sort of competitive about him, which I think people will relate to. So it's beyond whether he's actually a priest, whether he's an exorcist, et cetera, et cetera. It's somebody who was beaten in a fight who just wants to win the fight back, I think.
I would be remiss if I didn't ask you, but one of the movies of yours that has a massive following at the website I work for at JoBlo is Ravenous, right? We end up doing reviews of Ravenous or videos. It somehow comes up like every month. People
It's a classic, isn't it? It really is a classic. It's hilarious, that film.
It is amazing though how sometimes things have kind of come full circle, right? Because I remember distinctly when it came out, people were like, "Oh, this movie is so fucked up. Don't go see it." And then that made me want to go see it, and I went to go see it, and it was amazing. And now it's kind of held up as this kind of like this classic, right? Like this great movie of its era.
It's hilarious.
Yeah, you still get a kick out of it after all these years?
Yeah, I mean, of course, what's interesting for us is that, the experience that we had when we made the movie, because none of you know that. I mean, you might have read about it. I'm sure anyone who's interested in it has probably read the history of it. But, the film was fraught with such drama. The first director was fired off the movie, and they brought in another director, and we had a mutiny and refused to work with that second director. And then there was a third director who ended up directing the movie. And, we had Fox Studios, Fox 2000 was there sort of trying to instill their kind of attitude about it. And, we were sort of trying to keep up what Milcho Manchevsky, the original Macedonian director, was wanting to make. And, so it was really horrible, a horrible, horrible experience, to be honest, And of course, there was all the drama with the composer as well. You've got Michael Nyman sort of doing half of the score and Damon Albarn doing the other half of the score.
I love the score for that movie, though. I think it's
it's fantastic. I mean, it's kind of fantastic, but it's this real kind of weird mishmash of stuff. And then you've got these shots in the movie where we're running and someone steps on a piece of snow, which is clearly a piece of Dacron that just goes like this, and it's still in the movie. And you're like, wow, this is the campiest kind of, it's like a sort of a high school, it's sort of great because there's great actors in it, Jeffrey Jones and Jeremy Davies and
Robert Carlyle, yourself. Yeah.
Robert Carlyle, Stephen Spinella, all these fantastic actors in it. And yet there's something really amateurish about it, which is kind of exciting and hilarious and weird. But it sort of holds up in a funny way.
It really does.
People can't let it go, know. So,
it's kind of a classic, like a midnight classic. Like I'm trying to think, it's like Jodorowsky or something like that in a weird way. And then just one more, I got to say, as much as maybe Ravenous is a cult classic for the reasons that you said, then there's something like LA Confidential or The Proposition, which I would wager is a classic for like all the best reasons, right?
Yes, of course. Yeah. I mean, those films, there's no question about the quality of those films and that they've stood the test of time. And, I mean, really, I think for a lot of films, time is such a sort of telling quality, isn't it? Everyone has a reaction to a film at the time because culturally that's what we need or we don't need, etc. But have a look at it in 2 years, 4 years, 6 years, 10 years time, 20 years time, and what we think of it then, because there's something, the dust has settled.
Yeah.
And so we, like Ravenous, you go, well, there's something about Ravenous. There's clearly things about LA Confidential, no question about those films.
And The Proposition, that's a stone cold classic. Like I remember watching that.
I agree.
Made my hair fall out and never grew back.
Well, ironically, that's the longest I've ever had my hair in a film was on The Proposition. So,
Well, thank you very much for indulging me. I appreciate your time. And I thought the movie was great and you were amazing in it. Thank you so much.
Very much. No, it's good fun. All right. Good to talk to you, Chris. Take care, mate. Bye. Thanks.